It's Café Ride time. Loaf is back here. I'm Reese. Marley is going to be joining us today, which I am super excited about. Um, it's going to be so fun. She is phenomenal to talk to. I'm going to invite her. Let's see. Hi, Marley. We're waving at you. Invite Marley. There we go. Hopefully everyone's having a good day. Hey!
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, how are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
Great. I'm loving those glasses.
Thanks. It's a
I
work day for me, so I have my glasses on.
Are those like blue blockers?
No, maybe they're computer glasses.
Amazing, incredible.
Thanks.
There's Loaf. He says hi. You can see him back there on the couch.
Oh, hi, buddy.
He's just
My
loafing.
girlfriend somewhere.
I know, it's like you have a dog too.
Yeah.
Um,
Cool.
but I feel like we have so much to talk about. So I'm going to jump right in.
Yeah.
One, thank you so much for doing this. Um, I'm super excited. It's crazy that like we haven't met in real life, but that's going to change soon.
Next
Um,
week.
yeah, we'll get to this. We'll get to that later. Um, but I would love it if you could start us off with like who you are, how you got into cycling, because I mean then I'll follow up with like a million other questions. But like, how'd you get into cycling? What's that story?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm Marley. I use she, her pronouns. I live in Seattle currently. And I got into cycling because I had just gotten divorced. And I moved from West, yeah,
Sup, girl?
Divorcee Club.
It's so
And so
cool.
I had just moved from West Seattle, where we had a car, to Capitol Hill in Seattle, where I don't know if you remember last year, like when the CHOP and the CHAZ and the whole autonomous zone was happening. It's just a very, like, I was living 3 blocks from there. And this was years and years and years ago. But it's just a super dense area of the city. So having a car didn't make a lot of sense. If I worked downtown like 3 miles away. So taking the bus to work took me like an hour, which is so stupid to go like
Oh
three
my god,
miles.
so frustrating.
Uh, yeah, walking would have been fine, but I'm kind of lazy, and it was like, oh, I can just ride a bike. Uh, so it kind of started there, and then it was like, wow, you can have so much fun on a bicycle. It was just like this feeling of freedom that I hadn't had since I was a kid, and it really just blossomed from there, and it became like, oh, I can go bike camping. Oh, I can ride gravel. Like, there's so much out there to explore. That's
I mean,
really where it started.
well, like, how did you go from? Because I've heard this a lot. Actually, someone that just visited from Portland, he was saying that when he moved here from Kuwait, here being Portland, he started using his bike as a commuter, and he was like, I mean, it's just the most convenient thing in Portland. But he was like, then you like, it's like, oh, this is fun. I'll just start doing longer rides. And so is that for you, or are you like, we're just like, no, this is just transportation, and then it just like the possibilities kind of opened up?
Yeah, kind of both. I kind of fell in with this crew that like bikes were their life, and like there was a Thursday night ride, and then they did camping trips and just kind of bike parties and bike shenanigans. And so then it like really opened my eyes of like, oh, this can really become so much more. And then, I think the next question that always comes is, well, how did you get into like advocacy? And like riding a bike is very different than like, what I'm doing now and getting other
Right.
folks to ride. And basically, I've just never been a person that's like okay with the status quo. And like, I'd go on these rides and would never have like a rain jacket that fit me properly, or a chamois that fit properly. And it was like, at first I thought it was me. I thought like, oh, I'm just not looking in the right places, or um, I don't know what brands to look at. And then I realized like, no, they just don't exist for people in larger bodies. And I've never been okay with that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to raise some hell.
Yeah, good for you.
So like my initial tactic was just like Twitter, and then like emailing the companies. And that wasn't the most successful. Uh, but
Twitter is like I have opinions on Twitter.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so yeah, well, but like, I think when you're frustrated and you don't know where to go, I think that's why people do turn to social media, because they're like, it's like a place where someone can have a voice and they feel like, okay, I'll say something here, don't ignore me.
Totally. Yeah. And then right around that same time, I got involved with like bike advocacy. So like working on safer streets and actual protected bike lanes here in Seattle. And I realized that like, oh, I could use those tactics for advocacy around inclusion in
Yeah,
cycling. So that's when I started like, you know, finding allies and finding other folks experiencing the same thing and realizing like, I don't need to be an individual voice in this. Like
yeah,
there's power in numbers. Let's do some research. Let's figure out what the market demand is. And that's when I started like, you know, teaching seminars and doing workshops and like actually reaching out to the brands in a way that they would listen. Saying
yeah,
like, hey, you know, plus size people make up 60% of the market. You're missing all of us.
yeah. It's actually, I mean, it's pretty crazy, and I feel like cycling in general, like someone like me, right? Like I have like total body dysmorphia. I think I don't think I know what I look like. I mean, I know I don't know what I look like, but it was so difficult for me to um, wear like super, super, super tight jerseys and tight clothing. And I was like, God, I hate cycling. Like, I hate it. Um, and it was just like highlighting my own insecurities. But the outfit kits for cycling, it really, for some reason, like it can be very polarizing for newbies. Like
Yeah.
there's something about it that if it doesn't fit you like your favorite pair of jeans or something, you're like, I don't want to do this sport. Like everyone else has to wear this. Like I don't want to be here.
Right.
And
It makes you feel like an outsider.
yeah, yeah, because I'm
And
like, well, I don't want to wear that outfit. I don't look like these people.
yeah, I forget who I was telling the story to, but I used to be like so dismissive of roadies. And like, I hope that's not a derogatory term, but like, you know, people in like the full lycra kits. I was like, yeah, I don't need to do that. I'm just going to wear my dresses and my whatever. But a big part of that was like, I just didn't have anything that fit me. And
Right.
so then, you know, over the past year or so, as more brands have started making things that fit me, I get it. Like, it's been this like light bulb moment of like, okay, it makes sense why
Yeah.
people wear the full on like lycra and spandex kit. Like
Yeah.
it's comfortable and it like wicks sweat away. And so now when I like give these presentations, I try and include photos of me like in the kit to
Yeah.
show that like, hey, I do it too. But then I also like, you know, juxtapose that with like, hey, I still ride bikes in sundresses and whatever.
Yeah. It's so funny because I have jerseys from like when I first started, and they're like super big on me. And so, but now I'm like, oh my God, that it's funny that that's what I was comfortable in, because eventually things got small, like they got to my size where they actually fit me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, no, this is just really comfortable and practical. And it's not like this parachute floating around in the wind. And like,
Right?
oh wow, this chamois is like fit for me. Like this feels good. Like I'm
Yeah.
uncomfortable. And it's funny that I can like look at a saddle and be like, okay, that's a women's specific saddle. It fits me really well. That makes sense. But then I look at clothing and I'm like, no.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, you know, I think there's like a big education part that needs to happen, but also just like, hey, you can still ride a bike in whatever you want. Just this might
Totally.
be a lot more comfortable.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's
yeah.
crazy. And then, okay, so we'll touch on, so can you talk about like how you got in, what the process was like with the video, All Bodies on Bikes, like how that came about. I think it's an awesome video. And that's actually one of the first ways I heard about you. And then, you know, through people at TPC, I didn't even like put the connection together when I was like, oh my God, finally, like I get it now. But I remember I sent that video to the marketing team and I was like, we need more of this. Like this is the energy we need going forward.
Awesome. I love that. Yeah. So Kaylee and I, the other woman in the video with me, had been doing a number of size inclusion conversations and webinars. And we were supposed to go to Washington, D.C. to the League of American Bicyclists. It's a big advocacy education group. and basically do a big seminar there. And then COVID hit. And kind of a blessing in disguise in that way. I mean, I hate to say like a pandemic is a good thing, but it
Right.
opened up our audience globally. And so one of her friends from college is a filmmaker, Zeppelin Zerip. He's the director. And he said, hey, we need to tell your story in film. Like this would resonate so well.
Yeah.
So he was the one who secured the funding from Shimano. He actually
Right.
slid into their DMs on Instagram.
Amazing.
Yeah,
That's like
it's
a
wild to
millennial
me.
Gen Z kind of thing. I like it.
Totally. Yeah, so he got the funding from Shimano and then hooked up with Sweetgrass Productions, who
Okay.
was the filmmakers and the sound and the editing. And they typically do, like extreme sports movies. So skiing and just like wild stuff. And so Kaylee and I were really nervous. Like
Yeah.
maybe I shouldn't say this word because somebody yesterday thought it was hate speech, but cisgendered white man.
Yeah.
Turns out that's not hate speech, by the way. We can
Yeah,
talk on
yeah,
that
for
later.
anyone that's curious, I mean, cis just, it's not a slur. It just means like you identify with the sex that you were like assigned at birth.
Yeah.
That's literally it.
Yeah, it definitely, I'm not trying to be offensive with that word at all. So anyway, filmmakers were like three, and they know I feel this way about them, really good looking men. And so we showed up and like so intimidated, but they did such a good job making our film and then telling our story. And yeah, that was kind of how it started. It's funny though, because like we've been doing this work for years before the film ever came out.
Yeah.
But that really got the snowball rolling. So as far as publicity and attention.
Yeah. I mean, the work you're doing is so amazing, and I love it on so many fronts because I think like when I think of diversity and inclusion, like, I'm in charge of doing a lot of like photo shoots and video shoots for TPC. And, I'm just like, okay, yes, I need to include women. Yes, I need to include people of like different ethnicities, like, and like also support them, pay the, like, don't just like, I would never tokenize someone. But I think a lot of times people forget about like body diversity. Cause I remember, just looking at, women on, publications, and they're like super tall and skinny. And I was like, and it just, I think it triggered like insecurities in my own, because I'm not tall and skinny. Like I'm like 5'2". I'm on like a child's bike.
Yeah.
And so it is nice when you can see yourself in an ad or in marketing. Like I like that, and being like, okay, like I feel seen here, and like these companies know that like that everyone from tall and skinny to short and fat and to tall and fat, like everyone is trying to ride bikes, and it shouldn't just be limited to one look.
And honestly, like if I go to a retailer or a brand website and I don't see bodies different sizes, I kind of assume that they don't have my size. And
Yeah.
And that's been a really, I think, eye-opening conversation for a lot of these brands that do make expensive sizes. They're like, well, they're not selling, people must not want them. I'm like, well, when I go to your website, I don't see anybody that looks like me or is even bigger than a size small. How would I even know to look for something bigger?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, okay, yeah.
So you've got the video, and now so that's where you were, but now where are you at now? And what does life look like now, and like where are you headed? Because I know there's so many exciting things, and you get to come to Colorado, which we'll chat about. But yeah, so what happened in the aftermath of this?
I was trying to make a list last night, and I hope this doesn't come off sounding pompous, but like of all the podcasts I've been on, and like interviews to like try and consolidate it on my website. And I don't even know. So it's just been like a little overwhelming, to be honest. But I quit my job. So Friday is my last day at my like full-time corporate job. And so I'm going to be pursuing this full time. So
that's crazy.
Thank you. I think a big part of that is like putting some legs and some structure into All Bodies on Bikes. So, what does it look like? Are we going to have like local chapters somewhere? So folks who want to ride with other people in an inclusive space
Mm-hmm.
know that they have that group to do that, or like, you know, building it as a nonprofit. Like, I don't know, that's where a lot of my energy is going to go to. But then
Yeah.
hopefully continuing to consult with the industry of how to be more inclusive, especially size. I mean, I recognize that I'm a white woman, so I definitely have some privilege there. Um, but yeah, that's what things look like now. Hopefully, doing some traveling, some biking.
Yep. You're coming out to, you're racing Steamboat, right?
Racing is a generous term. I'm going to ride it.
Okay. You're riding in Steamboat, Colorado for
Yes.
the event that's going on there.
Yeah, so that's next week.
It is. It is. But then, well, so that's on like the 15th.
Yeah, so that's Sunday.
Yep. And then Monday, so I live in Fort Collins, Colorado, which is about 3 hours from Steamboat. And Marley will be coming to Colorado. And on the 16th, I think at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, there's like a whitewater rafting park that is near New Belgium in Fort Collins. And we're going to meet there. Marley's going to lead like a 10-ish mile ride. And then we're all going to end up having some fat tire afterwards and just general hangs. You know, as long as people feel safe and, you know, we've got some social distancing. I think, you know, with the Delta variant, like I want to be a little cautious about that.
Yeah,
But I'm so excited that you're going to be in Colorado. But I mean, is leading rides like one of the first, are you going to like try to do more of this as you travel around?
exactly. Yeah, that's kind of the plan because I really feel like connecting with folks in person is the best way to do it and to demonstrate what an inclusive bike ride looks like. Like, how does no drop actually work? How
Yeah.
can they apply those concepts to their club ride or to whatever it might be? So yeah, I was in Kansas City earlier this year for Unbound Gravel. So I went to Unbound and led the pre-ride there, and we did that as a no drop ride. And I had like pros coming up to me and saying, "Hey, that's the first no drop ride I've actually been on," and that was like, "Whoa, that's wild! Like you guys just leave people behind?" And
Yeah.
they were like, "Yeah, we do." And I was like, "That sucks." Uh, anyway, point being, I then went back to Kansas City and led a ride there, which was really fun. And then we'll be in Portland. I say we because Kaylee is going to join me on that one in
Oh,
Portland. We're going on a bike packing trip, but the day before, we're going to lead a ride for Pedalpalooza, which is like a 3-month-long cycling festival Portland does. So
that's very Oregon.
yeah, yeah.
So Oregon.
Like yesterday, they had like a tandem ride. They have like a David Bowie ride. It's wild.
Nice. I think like the interesting thing about your story, or at least the common thread that I can see from the beginning, is like, you know, it's like community that got you into it. I think otherwise it sounds like, you know, you found like your people in Seattle that you were like, yeah, I found like this group and we started doing all this stuff. And so it's just like it reiterates to me, and like almost every conversation I've had with women is like the community is so important. Like if you don't have a community, like I don't know, maybe you just would have stayed as a bike commuter, and that's fine. That's fantastic as a bike commuter, but like you were able to find a community that was like supportive and inclusive, and you felt welcome and like heard, seen, and not judged. And so, you know, that just means like, hey, this person got into cycling. That's awesome for our cycling community, and they're trying to improve other communities. And it just is a reminder that like we all kind of need to have that mentality of like, remember what it's like to be a beginner.
Exactly.
Remember that like not everything is a competition. Not everyone needs to be like judged all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's human nature, you know, at the end of the day, like you see something, you're like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
But that's like our knee-jerk reaction. But I think we have the opportunity to like stop ourselves there and be like, oh, okay, like that was a judgment. Like I don't need to like dislike that person, or you know,
Totally. Yeah.
go further.
There's so many unwritten rules in like cycling culture and like the cool kid cycling culture, and
Yeah.
like trying to remember that like not everybody has access to that or even
Yes.
wants to be part of that, but it doesn't mean that they're not a good person or a talented rider or like fun
Right.
to hang out with.
Right.
We recently did like an all bodies on bikes ride here in Seattle with one of the local bike shops. And it was so cool because like the spectrum of people who showed up, like we had the cool kids who like, you know what I mean? Like they have
Yeah,
their cool like gravel bike packing bikes and like all the like, I don't know how else to say it, the cool kids. But then we also had like three people in their 70s who joined on
that's
e-bikes.
nice.
And then we had some like parents with kids, and it was just like such an inclusive group. And like I always try and I don't try and make people. I encourage people to talk to each other, regardless of who they are or if they knew each other. And I think that that really just encourages that to like go forward, like outside of the group ride. Like if you're at a red light, you can talk to the person behind you. Like you can say, "Hey, I like your bike," or like, "Where'd you get those fenders?" or whatever it might be. I don't know. That's part of the joy of being on a bike is just like interacting with the community around you.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's important. I think um, there is a difference, like you can be like cool. Um, I think you can be cool, but like be very personal and like nice. But I think like the elite and better than is like the attitude that I dislike about a lot of cycling, because like cool is like a made up word almost,
Right.
from like the 90s. Um, it's like prestige, right? It's like perceived value. And that's fine, whatever. Everyone has their own aesthetic and look,
Yeah.
but I think it's like the attitude of like I'm better than this person, therefore, I can't ride with them or can't talk to them, and that's pretty um, that cycling, it runs thick in cycling.
Yeah.
Uh,
And it's funny because I feel like each like sub genre of cycling has their own definition of like what is cool. So it's like,
yeah,
the mountain bikers and the road cyclists and the gravel and the bike campers and I don't know. At the end of the day, we're all just people and like I do
we're
all
in
of those
spandex.
disciplines. Like
I, I do love though the aesthetic thing, because so I'm always in like full lycra no matter what. I mean, sometimes I wear jorts like around town, but like if I'm out riding, I'm like in kit. And it's funny because I'm like not a good mountain biker. Um, but my bike would have you believe I know what I'm doing, and my kit would have you believe what I know what I'm doing. but then which almost to me feels like really intimidating, because I'm like, oh my God, someone thinks that I know what I'm doing. I'm like, I don't. Do not follow me. Do not be near me. Don't look at me. Your 5-year-old is going to be better than me at this.
yeah.
And so it's like a weird mind game in my head where I almost want to dress differently as like an outward signal to other people that like I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And
It's
it's
funny because I've experienced that like
yeah,
once I started making kits in my size and I started wearing them and then like now that I'm sponsored by a few different companies, I'm on nicer bikes. People treat me so differently. Like I get like the head nod from other roadies that I've never gotten before. Or
that's
like
interesting.
I get acknowledgement from people like if I go to like the coffee shop after my ride, people ask me like, "Oh, what route did you just do?" Versus like when I would show up on my Surly in like I don't know cycling tights and just like a shirt, no conversation whatsoever.
Weird.
Yeah, and it's like my riding style hasn't changed, my skills haven't changed. It's just what I'm wearing, and I hate it. I'm like, we should all be just I don't
Yeah.
know, taking care of each other like we're regular people.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean it's funny because when I worked at Specialized, I'm a runner through and through, and so I always wore no-show socks, or like socks that were this high. And I just like looking back though on photos of me on a bike, I'm like, ooh, why was that your thing?
Because
I'm
it was
like,
comfortable, whatever.
yeah, like it's almost just like I was like almost embarrassed to wear tall socks, and now I was like I would not be seen in no-show socks.
Which is so funny because it's like such an arbitrary thing. Like there's
Super dumb.
socks. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny. Just like the more into a sport you go, the more like opinions you start like formulating and like the trends you get on, and it's just, it's funny. And I know that every sport or every niche probably has this, but it's interesting just looking at it, you know, in terms of just cycling, because that's what my lens is.
Yeah.
But so I think like the last thing I want to talk about is maybe, not that we can't keep talking about clothing, but like, you know, as you've progressed through cycling, and you kind of alluded to this, like how things have changed for you personally, like what have you noticed with like trying to get more like all bodies on bikes? Like, have you noticed more people out riding? Like what has been your, maybe even just like a heartwarming measure of success for you?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, a lot of my stuff is anecdotal. I don't necessarily have hard numbers, except for like
Right.
the growth of our Facebook page and growth of
Right.
Instagram. Um, but I think COVID was huge. I think a lot of folks got back on their bikes for the first time and have hopefully stayed on their bikes, you know, whether it's just their kids or commuting or whatever it might be. Um, but I think, you know, just the stories that I get in my inbox from people from all over the globe saying, I haven't been on my bike in 10, 15, 20 years, and you've inspired me to get back on. Or
Yeah.
I did this triathlon that I was so nervous about, and you and Kaylee's film inspired me to do it. So like those stories from individual folks is amazing. But
Yeah.
I think more exciting is the brands reaching out to us and
That's so
saying,
nice.
we see what you're doing, we hear what you're doing, help us join your journey.
That's
So
so cool.
like, yeah, I mean, even brands like Rafa, who like, I can't fit into anything of theirs. Like they're full on acknowledging that they have a problem and their mission as a company is to make cycling the most popular sport. But to do that, they've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
And so like that is probably the biggest, just like, whoa, we are opening hearts and minds. And like, I don't know, I think being, sorry, I'm all over the place, I haven't taken my ADHD medication yet today, but also like being on the start line at Unbound Gravel, I'm like talking to these men who were next to me. They were just like, yeah, we love what you're doing. I was like, wait, who are you? And they're like, oh, it doesn't matter, but we know who you are. I was like,
That's
what?
so cool. That's so nice. It's like one of those like little moments of like, oh, like I'm making a difference.
Yeah. So,
And
you know,
that
and
feels good.
what I really hope comes out of that is like, you know, maybe they have a friend who lives in a larger body who knows that they ride bikes. They can say, hey, Bob, like, I would love to come for a ride with you one day. And Bob's
Yeah.
like, cool, let's do it. And isn't like going to take them on some 50-mile, like, grueling sufferfest, but
Yeah.
is like, yeah, let's do this and bring them in a way that's friendly and inclusive and like maybe shows them all bodies on bikes or like
Yeah.
points them towards the resources we've created.
Yeah.
So
That's great. And then before we go, is there any like, I think you just kind of started touching on it. Is there any like quick, like advice that you would give people either in whatever body that they're in to be more inclusive as they can, like just like in their personal life? Because I think like, you know, doing writ large, like big brands, like you consult with that, that's like your thing. But like, you know, for me or for someone else, like if you were like, hey, here's something to think about.
yeah, I think, you know, all of us have a fat friend, family member or a fat friend, and just try and put yourself into our shoes for a day. You know, think about every time we go to a restaurant and like the chairs have tiny little arms, or we get on an airplane, or, you know, any number of situations. It's like, you know, if we're going kayaking, as the smaller person, how can you use your position of power or relative power and privilege in this situation
Yep.
to make things better? So, like, can
Yeah.
you call ahead and say, hey, what's the weight limit for this kayaking trip?
Yep.
Or, you know, if you go to a restaurant, can you ask, like, hey, do you have any other chairs? So that way that emotional burden isn't necessarily on the larger person.
Yeah.
And so none of that is cycling specific. It's just
Yeah.
about being, like, cognizant and
Considerate.
aware and
Yeah.
considerate. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's great. And then for your ride here in Fort Collins, I mean, everyone of all abilities, bodies are encouraged. I
Yep.
hope I want to join. Like I'm planning on it.
You better
Um,
be there.
yeah, I'm like, it starts next to my house and ends at my house.
Yeah.
So
not creepy at all. Just don't
yeah.
be weird to Reese, please.
Yeah, don't be weird to me. But I have a lot of beer here. Thanks, Fat Tire. I have so much. They came by and dropped off some, and I was like, my neighbors definitely think I have a problem.
That's awesome.
But we'll have more information on that, and that'll be the 16th of August at 5 p.m. in Fort Collins.
Yep.
And then after that, the ride, so Betsy, who I know Betsy, so it's the 16th of August, 5 p.m. Right here, Fort Collins, Colorado, at the Whitewater Rafting Park. We'll post more on that. We have a bunch of info, and the route we'll post, which is it's a really easy route. It's about 10-ish miles, pretty flat, but it's
which will be good because I'll need a recovery ride after Steamboat.
Yeah, you'll be at like 5,000 feet too. But
I'm so nervous for that. Like, any tips before we sign off?
When do you get here?
Hopefully Wednesday. A week
Okay.
from today.
Yeah. So depending on how your body, it's very genetic how people react to altitude. But I would say the biggest thing is drink water. And not that Steamboat's super high, but it's 7,000 feet. You tend to burn more carbs at altitude.
I love carbs.
Yep. So there you go. I love carbs too. So drink water, make sure you're fueled, burn a lot of carbs, you burn more. Don't do ketosis. Sorry.
Don't do what?
Ketosis.
Oh. Yeah. No.
I can't do that. But I'm so happy that you're coming here. And I don't know, like the first time we had a conversation, I felt like I was like, I want to become best friends with this person. Like,
yeah. Do you remember we both cried?
Yeah, we both cried. I was like just about to get emotional about you talking about. Everyone makes fun of me. I cry on these things every freaking week. And but you were talking about how, like, you know, you're making change, and I'm like, oh my God, don't cry, not again. I'm just getting old and emotional these days. So
okay, I feel like it's just way more important to like be true to who you are.
Yeah.
Than like hide your emotion. And I'm learning that, like, that's one of the big reasons I'm leaving the corporate world. Is like I would just get so frustrated in meetings and like leave crying. I'm like, nope, I need to be in a world where I can fully be myself and cry and be happy. And yeah.
You actually, so I'm gonna even move around within my own house. Marley, the first time we ever talked, she told me, because we cried, she told me to buy this, The Highly Sensitive Person, and I did.
What do you think of it?
It's great. I'm a highly sensitive person, but also a big extrovert, so it's interesting.
Same. It's so hard.
Yeah, it's weird. But God, I'm so excited for you to get here, and for, you know, anyone in Fort Collins to join, drink beer, get to just positive vibes and vectors out there in the world.
Yes.
And thank you for just being an amazing ambassador. Like, we are so happy to work with you, and that you're, you know, allowing us to support you. Any brand should be really lucky to partner with you. So I hope you're really choosy about, you know, who you work with, because you represent a lot of really great things, and you're doing a lot of great things.
Thank you so much. And, you know, I really appreciate just the public support that you guys gave me. Yesterday there was the hubbub, but seeing you come through and like just no questions asked, standing up for me is phenomenal. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think, you know, when a company sponsors someone, they should sponsor all of that person and all of their actions. And if they aren't proud of their athletes' actions, like, you probably shouldn't be working with them. But we're really proud of you. And so I'm just thrilled you're coming out here and we get to ride and drink beer together.
Yes, thank you. And I'll do my best not to disappoint.
You won't. It's not possible. It's off the table. But thank you so much for chatting and sharing your story.
Yes. Thanks for having me on.
Yep. Bye, Marley.
Bye.